You're watching TelecomTV's exclusive coverage from the ETSI NFV 9 meeting in Prague in the Czech Republic. And I'm joined now by Brian Skerry, who is Senior Software Architect at Intel. Brian, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Can we start by just getting a recap of where we think we are with the NFV standards work at the moment?
So right now, as we kind of move from the informative to the normative stage, this is where the rubber really meets the road. And, it's a very interesting time to be involved in this effort. I think the first phase, it took us, fair to say, a little while to get going, but once we hit our stride, there was a lot of very important architectural direction set, a lot of good general guidelines. I think now, as we're getting to that next level of detail, we're getting to where it can really provide clear direction to the equipment manufacturers, to the software vendors. So it's an exciting time, and I think what happened in that first phase is largely responsible for what you see happening now in the industry, including in the open source, including a lot of these other efforts, which some might say are competing for the attention, but in a good way, I think. I'm not sure we would be worried about that problem if we hadn't done all the good work we did over the last 2 years. So in some ways, it's a good problem to have.
So what do you think the challenges are that still exist, that need to be overcome as we move and develop this work forward?
Right. So, I think when one is actually writing software applications, it's fine to have that sort of high-level architecture with, defined interface points. But until you start to get to the nitty-gritty of what exactly is able to cross that interface point, what kind of actions you're able to invoke from above and then are expressed below, what kind of the real behaviors of the system, and that's when you really start to get to the interoperability challenges. And I know that Don Clark mentioned yesterday at the plenary how that interoperability is seen as key to a lot of the value that's going to be perceived and realized by NFV. I think that'll be an ongoing challenge going forward. Every vendor, I think, has their own view of the level of specificity that we should achieve over the next, now that we're in phase 2. But I think we'll make some important strides and be able to demonstrate what the service providers need in the what comes out of this effort.
And this interoperability you mentioned between vendors and looking at what the service providers need, does this openness and collaboration extend to the service providers themselves? I mean, should we be seeing, or are we seeing the service providers getting together and collaborating and sharing their needs and I guess as we go along, best practices?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from the point of view as Intel providing platforms that can meet their needs, it's great to have a forum where we can say, okay, this is the kind of features, kind of requirements that are very important to them as the end customers, so that we, certainly speaking as Intel, we've got with silicon very long lead times to meet some of these requirements. So it's great to have an industry forum where they can get raised and get the visibility at a technical level, but it also helps, frankly, within a broader organization, a company like Intel being able to set priorities. It has to be seen as, it's not just us techies down at the bottom saying, hey, this is important, but it's seen all the way up the chain. So yeah, it's been very valuable from that perspective.
And of course, the question of costs always comes up when we talk about new technology and implementing new platforms. How do you best maximize the use of what you've got? How do you maximize your software investment without necessarily having to reinvent the wheel and just keep acquiring more?
Well, that's where I think we can look to, and this I think was, I know because I was there, part of the original charter of the NFV, is to take advantage of those best practices from what we've seen happen on the cloud, what we've seen happen in data center, take that kind of technology and apply it to this environment. And we are doing that. You know, you look at efforts that might happen around, let's say, some of the interfaces, like with Open vSwitch, that's been an area that we've been quite active in accelerating the data plane there. And those control points and those interface points, you know, like to the VM through VirtIO, for example, those are things that have been around. We didn't invent them for this purpose, you know, for NFV, but we're able to take advantage of those kind of things and, you know, broaden the playing field and give everyone those interface points that people go, yeah, that's been in use in the cloud for, you know, literally years, and it works.
So is there sufficient activity going on with the open source community? Are there sufficient open source projects there that will come together under NFV and fulfill all the requirements, or are there still gaps that we need to?
I think it's fair to say there are gaps, and you know, I'm not sure we can look to open source to always meet all the needs of you know, especially when we look at the regulatory environment and some of the constraints that are imposed upon the service providers. But nor should we. I mean, there's you know, there's always going to be a role for proprietary software for people to make money doing this, appropriately so. I think what the open source community can do is, you know, again, going to an example like VirtIO and Open vSwitch, where we're able to show performance improvements, stability, feature, you know, rich feature set, that then, you know, I know there's equipment manufacturers who are taking that then as a baseline and leveraging it and putting their own, you know, orchestration layers above OpenStack, for example, or you know, maybe leveraging the capabilities, you know, through an SDN controller that may or may not be proprietary, but having those interface points that then can have the interoperability. So it's an exciting time to be in this industry, and I think the open source efforts kind of raise all boats.
Well, Brian, thanks very much for talking with us, and best of luck with the ongoing standards development work. Thank you.
Thank you.